This video is brought to you by Patreon provider Scott.
Minimum brightness. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Maximum brightness.
This thing certainly looks pretty bright when you get to maximum brightness during the middle of the nighttime. However, as you'll see as you come closer to the end of the video, it doesn't always seem that bright. It's not the reticle, I assure you, it's the camera.
Pew pew.
The camera always has a hard time picking up reticles when it comes to red dots or reflexes such as this, whereas opposed to LPVOs, it always seems to show a little bit more.
Pew pew.
I can't really justify it, but all I can do is stress to you that the reticle is easier to see with the naked eye than it is through the camera. With that being said, there are only very few exceptions to this entire video that you're going to see that the reticle is really completely washed out to the point where it becomes useless, like you just saw on a white wall with a bright flashlight shining on it. However, at the 50-yard line, it is clear and it is pretty crisp. Now, as far as brightness goes, you might think that it's not at maximum brightness, but you'd be wrong. That is again the camera. Even though green is an easy color for the naked eye to pick up, my camera does not do such a good job. However, with the 512 that I just reviewed, the gold dot was perfectly fine. However, just like the 512 I reviewed, you're going to notice that the 2 MOA dot in the middle is not really a dot, it is more oblong than that. Kind of like a rugby ball. Several people commented saying that the magnifier was causing the issue with the 2 MOA dot, but I assure you it is not the magnifier. The magnifier is clear, bright, and crisp, as you can see. There's almost no distortion with this magnifier at all. Speaking of distortion, this is a typical view through the 510. There is not that much tint as opposed to the 512. I think this has a little bit clearer glass than that, but there is a little bit of distortion to it. I don't believe it's magnification. I think it's just a little bit of parallax due to the different panes of glass that are inside. One thing I really like about reflex is that the reticle, no matter how far or close it is to your eye, will remain constant. It's a little bit of witchcraft, but I absolutely love it. Whether you like having it right next to your face or all the way towards your muzzle like in a scout setup, it'll work. Another thing is, you can see the emitter from the front of this thing. Not a super issue, but it's still something to keep in mind. Now, I tried to mimic this video as close to the 512 as possible.
Pew pew.
This way you can have a almost direct comparison between the 510 and the 512. And in all honesty, it's actually really difficult to distinguish between the two of them. The only way you can really do it is by reticle color, in this case, or by the actual outside of the scope. But if you were looking through just the glass portion, I bet you wouldn't be able to figure it out.
Pew.
Full-size IPSC target's about 50 yards,
Pew.
and the mini IPSC target is about 70 yards. If you're like me and you like LPVOs and you don't like having the magnifier sticking off the side of your gun, have a quick release mount on it and it comes off that quickly. Throw it in your pocket and you're good to go. It takes a lot of weight off your gun, and it also streamlines the hell out of it.
Pew pew.
However, you still have to be very mindful of it. If you throw it in your pocket, you gotta hope that it doesn't fall out. In this case, I don't have to really worry about it, but if you're in the field or if you're doing a 2-gun or a 3-gun, it's something you really have to be mindful of. Now here's one of those instances where you're gonna wash out the reticle. Again, a very bright surface with a flashlight.
Pew pew.
Beyond that, it's really not too bad. From there, we're going to go to our farthest target. It's about 400 yards and it has an 80-inch steel door. However, you can't really see it without a magnifier. This Vortex Micro 3X does wonders to help you get out and see a little bit farther. Again, take note of that 2 MOA dot in the middle. It's not really a dot, it's again more oblong than that. Also, take note of the colors. You're going to see something happen real quick. We're going to go from the 510 to the 512. Nothing's going to change except for the scope. Remember how I mentioned the 512 had different tinted glass? Well, you can see it working there. It brings a little bit more life to the colors. Some manufacturers say it's to help see the reticle better. You can see it on my 512 review, but if you hold down the negative button for 3 seconds, it will cycle through the 3 different reticle options. But if you hold the positive button for 3 seconds, it puts it in auto brightness mode. Cover the sensor and it gets darker. Put a flashlight or another bright light source on, it will get brighter, and it works well. I don't personally run auto brightness. I find it never gives me the brightness that I'm looking for. However, this does work well. On that note, the buttons being on the side are a really nice feature because when running this with a magnifier, if I wanted to change the brightness, it's very easy to get to. If you're buying a red dot that has the buttons on the back, forget about running a magnifier with it. It's going to be almost impossible to get to. If you're looking at the reticle, you're going to see the square that pops up around it. That is in fact the emitter. and it does show up in daytime sometimes, or when you have the brightness really, really high, you will see the emitter body around it. Now, on the 512, the sensitivity on the Shake Awake was extremely high, and with this it is no different. It is an awesome feature that I wish every Red Dot had. Take a look. Barely even touch it and it wakes up. Holosun does this right, and that's another reason why their battery life is so high. I believe it's always on, and you can adjust it from 10 minutes up to, I believe, 24 hours. It's excellent. So why would you buy this over an EOTech? Well, at about $400, this is a pretty compelling argument. It has a lot going for it. Not only does it look like most of the older EOTechs that were out there, such as the XPS that I had reviewed a couple of years ago, but the Shake Awake option is really nice. The fact that it has 50,000 hours battery life is insane. The solar panel helps with that. It's all good stuff. And then the quick release mount is a really nice option as well. Overall, the fit and finish of this thing is really high quality. It doesn't feel like a cheap optic. But at $400, it's not cheap. It's still affordable, I feel, for what you're getting, but about another $100 to $150, you could get into an EOTech. Not saying that Holosun doesn't have a good track record with it, but it's always something that is going to be in the back of my mind. But it comes down to what you need and what you want. They both have very good features, though 50,000 hours battery life versus about 1,000 hours battery life at, I think, 12 setting out of 20. I think the EOTechs are coming a little bit heavier than this. However, those are American made, which I'm a big proprietor of, and these are Chinese made. Not saying that this isn't good. I think this is very good. But could you get better for a little bit more? That's entirely up to you to decide. Would I run one of these? I think I would, but I wouldn't run this one. I would run the 512. I'm a fan of how the 512 looks, feels, and functions. Not saying that this doesn't function or feel good by itself, but comparing the two side by side, I like this a little bit more, despite the fact it doesn't have a quick release mount, whereas this one does. And I do really like the color of this 510 Elite. The 512 just wins it for me. As far as weight goes, at 7.6 ounces, this is very, very lightweight. Even lighter than the 512. And you can feel those couple ounces. I like this little thing. It does have a couple of shortcomings, but if you can get over those, I think this will be a good purchase for you. Scott, thank you so much for sending this in. I really do love getting my hands on Holosuns. I do think that they make a phenomenal product at a reasonable price point. However, when some of these get really close to the price of an EOTech, it's a little bit harder for me to justify it. For you, it might not be an issue. And if you can find this on sale, then it's almost a no-brainer. Thank you very much for watching. See you again next time.